Hello and welcome to Art of Heart. Today is Thursday and I am legit excited about the guest. I realize I always say I'm excited because I get so into these conversations, but I have a secret for everybody. I am obsessed with the Olympics. I mean obsessed. Like I am the psycho who is like I don't sleep. Like I have to cancel meetings. I don't sleep because the events happen at all different times and I just have to catch everything. And so today we get a little insight into the heart of an Olympian and my guest is going to share his story today, and not only is it profound, but I am really excited to understand more of the inner workings of what it takes to be an Olympian and how you felt during these pivotal moments. So, without further ado, welcome, Shannon.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So, tell us a little bit more about like who you are and what you do. Obviously, I've already piqued everybody's interest. We know you're an Olympian, but what does that mean?
Uh, to be quite honest, I still think I'm just a normal, regular person. I just had a skill set that I was very passionate about and I driven to do. So a little bit about my background. I'm a two-time Olympic athlete. I just qualified for my third Olympics. Outside of being an Olympian, I also work a full time corporate job. I am a software engineer right now in the oil and gas industry. So, very busy trying to balance being a sort of full time corporate guy and training for the Olympics. So, my life is a little bit hectic. I've been a ski racer probably, I'd say, for the better part of the 20 plus years. I started when I was 3 years old, started skiing, and then when I was five, that's when I started competing more regularly. And then at 15, I started competing more internationally. I was born and raised in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada. I grew up in Canada, although I right now most of my travels is between Canada and the United States. And started skiing in the Rockies. Really enjoyed it, and yeah, my passion took off. And in 2018, I got to go to my first Olympics. 2022, I qualified again, and then I recently qualified this past January for my third Olympics.
That's so wild. So let's go back to like you started when you were 3. I have a 3-year-old niece, okay? And we cannot get her to do anything she doesn't want to do. I cannot imagine her doing something that was with as much skill as skiing. Like literally if like she was trying to put her leggings on yesterday and she was number 1, she did not want any help. Like help was not anything that was on her radar. And then when eventually she tried and she was super mad and she screamed for a few minutes, I was like, "I told you I would help." And she was like, "Fine." But she wasn't happy about it. So I can't imagine what it's like to be so young and building those muscles of training and being an athlete. How cool.
Yeah, I will admit it wasn't initially my choice to be a skier. I grew up in a small town, so in Canada, hockey is a very predominant sport, especially from your if you're from a smaller town. Everyone dreams of going to the NHL, and that was a dream that my brother and I had. But it was actually my sister who convinced my parents to put us in ski racing. So at first, it wasn't my choice, but slowly started to enjoy it, and I'm glad it took me to where I am today.
Yeah, it is interesting because I've done a lot of business in Canada, a lot of business. And my very first Canadian trip, I had like a buddy who was from Canada, and I was sent to his province to help do some work. And he's like, "Okay, I'm going to tell you something that's very important." And I was like, "I'm listening." And he's like, "In Canada, hockey is the first. So, like, when you meet somebody, they're going to ask you about, do you like hockey in some way, shape, or form? It may not be that direct." And he's like, "The very next thing is Tim Hortons." And so, as long as you know that, like, hockey and then Tim Hortons and then relationships and everything else, you'll be just fine. So, I totally can see how that could be like a little bit of a divergence for sure.
Yeah, and I often get asked that question, like why I picked a niche sport instead of doing something that most Canadians do. I mean, where I live right now, I live in Calgary, and we're very close to the mountain, so everyone here at least participates in skiing. But hockey is pretty much everyone's sport. So when I tell them I didn't grow up playing hockey, it's a little bit of a shock.
Oh, I'm sure. But do you go to Tim Hortons?
Oh yeah, often. Like that's my
Okay.
number one
Okay.
thing. We actually have a Tim Hortons on site in the oil and gas industry. So I live and work on camp, and we have a Tim Hortons, and there's a lineup every morning. So I grab my phone and I order in advance because it's usually going to be a 15-minute wait.
It's literally a thing. I love it. It was I have a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun experiences in Canada and some really wild things that have happened too. So it's cool to see the connection of Tim Hortons for sure. So we're gonna jump into our first story today, and it's I feel like in life there's this constant push and pull, right? Of like there's good, there's hard, and aha. We talk about this a lot in the podcast and a lot in the work I do. Um, and sometimes we mistake hard for bad. And I think that there's a theme that we as humans are like, oh, that was hard, that was bad. But I think everything in your story, and when we talk about hard, hard isn't necessarily bad, but hard is what's next. And so tell us about the first story, which is how you overcame unexpected obstacles.
Yeah, so uh, leading up to my first Olympics, I always thought it was, I wouldn't say easy, but I thought it was going to be a clear-cut path. I'm going to go to the Olympics, everything's going to be fine, I'm going to make lots of money and live happily ever after. And the reality was that wasn't the case. So in 2014, I had the chance to go to my first Olympic Games, and I ended up missing it out by 300ths of a second. So if you take your finger, it's like basically this much. A lot of it was within my control, and that was hard for me to accept that I could have been there, but I made decisions that put me in a bad position, and then last minute I was rushing to qualify. So having to then overcome that and then put my entire life on the back burner. I was just finishing high school at that point, and my plan was go to Sochi, graduate, go to engineering school, and live the rest of my life. So having then to delay 4 years of my life for this goal that I didn't really know if it was going to work out, it
Mm.
was difficult. And I think that like the next year I was kind of in a limbo phase. Everyone in my life was going to college, enjoying life, and I was pretty much, now I look back at it, it was a lot of fun, but I was traveling, I was away from friends and family. I didn't have like the support mechanisms while everyone else was enjoying their life. I was stuck chasing this Olympic dream. So 2015 was one of the worst years, I would say, of my career. And I was in a crossroad. Do I continue to go down this path? Because I didn't heal from the failure in 2014. So I made a decision at the end of that season that I was gonna move away and just focus full time. So I moved to a smaller town. It's about 3 hours from Calgary. It's called Invermere. It's deep within the Rockies. It's a town of 3,000 people. So you can imagine me going from a city of, a million plus to small town where literally there was only one fast food chain. I think they just opened up a McDonald's in that town last year. So it was very small, very isolating, and made me re-question again, what am I doing? Like, why am I going on this path when there's obviously this easy way out? Um, Through time, things were better. Like the coach that I ended up working with, he had worked with the Austrian and Australian national team, so he was well respected in the community, but he's very hard on me, and I didn't really like the progression. It wasn't coming the way I wanted to, and given that I wasn't making the changes personally to become integrated in the team and really enjoy the sport at that time in my life, and up until that point ski racing was my life. I didn't have anything else. But all my other teammates were getting better results than me because they were learning to sort of separate the two identities. So when you're on the hill,
Mm.
you're training. When you're off the hill, you're doing something else. I didn't do that. Like my life revolved 24/7 around ski racing. Eventually, I did sort of break out of that. And when I was making those changes, I ended up getting hurt. So it was started getting better results. And then one day I decided I wanted to push a little bit harder in training and just made one turn and got flung up in the air. When I was in the air, I felt something snap, And when I landed, I was in excruciating amount of pain. I had torn my ACL, my MCL, medial meniscus, pretty much all the ligaments in my left knee were gone, and then I had a tibia fracture. I didn't get that news until 2 weeks later, and I was feeling like optimistic. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like not a bad injury. I'll recover from this, because I was seeing at the time a lot of other athletes get the same injury. For people that aren't familiar, so with skiing, it's very hard on the knees and just the forces. If you hit it right, you can tear your knee. So it's very important to have proper strength training, and I wasn't following the proper protocol, so I put myself in a bad situation. So I had the surgery in February 2016, and then that pretty much killed everything for me. It was a year rehabilitation. 4 months in, my first surgery failed, which required me to have another surgery. And at that point, my doctors were not even sure if I could have a properly functioning knee or properly functioning life after that in terms of my athletic ability. So that was crushing. I didn't have a backup plan for school. At that point, I pretty much had messed around in high school, didn't have the best marks, and I put everything into this plan A. And now I'm realizing plan A is falling apart, and there's no plan B. I don't know
So
exactly. So yeah,
so hold on, before you go into you have said so many mind-blowing things in 5 minutes. So,
yeah.
first of all, when you talk about being one person on the hill, right? One person on the mountain, one person who's training, and then having this other person who I'm guessing that this is allows you to relax and recover versus this all train all day mentality. I don't think that I think that we, as someone who's never been a professional athlete, much less an Olympian, I don't think we understand what it's like to have to be so focused with your mind, your body, and your spirit, is my assumption that you have to align the three to be able to do these really taxing things over and over and over to build the skill. I don't think we really understand what that's like. Um, when you talk about how committed you were, it's really mind-blowing and powerful in a way, honestly, I hadn't expected. I'm kinda thrown. So, can you tell me what training looks like? What did your days look like? How many like, was this all day you trained? Do you train every day? Are there breaks? What is it like? And how does it align with your mind, body, and spirit when you're training?
So when I was full time professional athlete, so from pretty much 2014 to 2018, I was training 5 days a week. So sometimes I was double sessions on snow. So first thing in the morning, 5 a.m., I'm up, I'm warming up. And then we train from either 9 to 12 or 9 to 3. I come back to town around 4, 4:30, have some food, hit the gym for about 2 hours. By the time that's like 6, 7 o'clock, I have maybe an hour to sort out my things and get ready, because I need to be in bed by 8 or 9 to do the same thing again. So on average, this is basically a full time job for 8, 9 hours a day. I was just pretty much being pure focus and having very little time to just mentally recover. Because as soon as I woke up in the morning, I had to be mentally on cue to be prepared and focused to train to the best of my ability. So my mind,
There's no
body, and
off
soul.
days, right? Like, there's no opportunity. You wake up at 8 and you're like, "Oh, I really don't feel like it today. I'm mentally tired." You don't get to say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm gonna go hang out today."
No. And that's something I still struggle with now, working full time. There are days I come back after shift and I'm like, I don't want to train today, or maybe I'll just take it easy. But I know if I do that, that puts me in a bad place in terms of my progression, or it might put me in a place where I could get injured. So it's really important that I can't say it's realistic to be 100% focused, but just know that you're aligned with your goals and the direction of where you're going every single day. The 2 days that you get off, like, so, you work 5 days and then you get 2 days off. Those 2 days are just prepping for the next 5 days. So that's meal prep. That's prepping your skis. Luckily now I have a technician to do that, but back then I was doing all my prep work, and you really had no time to just breathe. I think the only time that I got off, and I had to negotiate this with my coach, was Christmas. So we had our season goes pretty much from sometimes it starts in August or early July in Southern Hemisphere or Europe, and it goes all the way to April, end of April. And so I only had Christmas off, which was 10 days. And that was the only thing I could negotiate with my coach.
Wow. It's, I just can't imagine. Like, I have a startup, so I have a startup in clean tech, which is interesting that you're in oil and gas and I'm in clean tech. And having a startup is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Just because the constant need to push and beyond. And I've had lots of big fancy corporate jobs and I've been a consultant and done all this, but it's all very much work with your mind, right? Like you're not that physical taxingness isn't there. And I really cannot imagine how you even now, how you work full time and you train. I can't imagine that shift because now you don't even get those 2 days off, even though you were only like just doing meal prep, right? I'm doing air quotes for those who can't see me, just doing meal prep and working on your ski. Like you don't even get that anymore because there are other demands, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough now with my position. The previous job I had before was a regular 5 to 2 plus training. I now only work um I work half the time out of the month. So I'm 8 days on, 10-hour days, and then I get 6 days off. But now when winter comes around, I pretty much fly back to Calgary, get in a car, drive to Invermere, which is my base, still my base, train the 5 days, drive back Monday night, and get on a plane on Tuesday. So I have no really no time to just relax right now. It's pretty much go go go.
No. Okay, so back into the story. So like tell me more about what it's like to be in the midst of training and you're like doing this insane thing. It really is kind of insane.
It is. I definitely question my sanity at some points. I think you have to be a little for anything you do in life. I'm realizing this. You have to be a little bit outside the box, and I'd say jokingly missing a few screws in your head because I
Yeah.
definitely have been asked by my friends and other people around me is like, why would you put this much stress on your life? And it's because I enjoy it. But yeah, you have to be a little bit crazy.
Wow. Okay, so you have been through this catastrophic injury
Yeah.
and what happens next?
I managed to overcome it. I had a really good team of doctors, physiotherapists. Second surgery went well. I rehabilitate, I recover, I get back on snow. And 3 months after I get back on snow, which I was really surprised, I end up qualifying for the Olympics for my first Olympic Games.
Amazing.
That was really shocking. I didn't expect it because it was such a frustrating process. I was only allowed to do 6 runs a day, just given the load on the knee. So I really doubted if this was going to work. So going from high performing athlete to someone that is just getting back on snow, I was really really happy. But something was wrong, and I didn't really know how to put my finger on it. This was something that it was. I still struggle to well, I understand, but I still struggle to tell this. But on the day that I qualified for the Olympics, I literally went back to my hotel room, ate a bag of chips, watched a TV show, and went to bed. And woke up the next morning, did the same thing. And my girlfriend at the time was shocked, and she was the first person to raise an alarm that something was wrong. Michael Phelps recently talked about this. There's something called post Olympic crash or post Olympic depression. And I was starting to feel the symptoms of that because at this point, I had dedicated 8 years to go into the Olympic Games. I gave everything. And now almost reached the finish line, but I had no plan B. A couple months later, we're in Europe training for a camp. And I remember one evening, training was going well. I was having the time of my life, but I would go back to my hotel room every night and just cry, and I had no idea
Mhm.
what was going on. And I remember one night, the thought of like, okay, I'm going to the Olympics, but what happens next? Because I had no education. I barely had enough money. Like everything at that point was supported through sponsors, no employment opportunities. What do I do next? And I knew realistically, just given the rehabilitation process and what I'd gone through ski racing, I had no inclination of doing another 4 years for an Olympics. Um, so yeah, it was really a weird time in my life because there was so much media attention, family, friends, a lot of support. Um, I was getting all the attention, but internally I was struggling. I really,
Did you feel alone?
yeah, I felt alone and I felt kind of ashamed because it's like you work so hard to achieve this goal and yet you don't feel happy. Like I'm like, why? Like I gave everything. Like now I have everything that I perceive would make me happy, but it wasn't making me happy. And a lot of it tied to the fact that I had not developed any skills outside of ski racing. There was nothing else. Like all my friends, like I had only friends in my sport. I didn't keep in contact with a lot of my friends from high school. Everyone that I communicated with and talked to was ski racing. So that's where I was saying before, my life was pretty much 24/7 ski racing. I went to the Olympics. Um, it was a very difficult time. Like even on the day of my race, my mom was the one that had to get me out of bed. Like I didn't want to compete that day. It's such a hard admission for me to say. And I remember my dad trying to talk to me and he's like, "What's going on? I don't understand. Like you've succeeded at your goal." And I couldn't wrap my head around it. So I went back to like so I came back to Canada after the Olympics. I had achieved a really good result and I spent probably the next couple months in limbo. I was working a retail job, messing around, kind of partying, just really lost at who I was with my identity. But I decided I'll go back to school. I started up my university studies again and trying to kind of mingle into the university life. And right away, I learned I did not fit. I still was coming to school with that same mentality of being an athlete. And it was the worst semester I ever had, even though I was 100% focused, dialed in the library. Everything with my food, my training, my sleep was everything like dialed in, like I was a ski racer, but I was miserable and
Yep.
unhappy. Then that semester, I had a nervous breakdown, and I remember it was my RA, my room advisor in college, had encouraged me to actually seek out therapy, and that's when I started to really unravel the fact that I had no identity and no purpose outside of my sport. So I made the hard decision that summer, the summer of 2019, to retire from ski racing, or I thought I was going to be, and walk away for good. I said I no longer wanted to be attached to that sport and my identity no longer tied. So I was able to get to a good place in my life and really find my identity outside my sport. Like I was in engineering school, I was getting good grades, I was making friends, and I was living like a normal college life, as most people get to live. Then COVID came. So during COVID, we all went online. And at that point, I think it was going from like 100+ days of skiing a year to only 3, 5 days within a year. Like this is something I did for
Wow.
years, and I just had so much anxiety to do this sport. So during COVID, like I really didn't have a lot to do. Like it was you do your classes, and then there's really nothing to do on the weekend. So I live near like the nearest ski hill from me is about 45 minutes. So my friends had encouraged me to, come out skiing on the weekends. And I slowly started to find my passion for this sport again, just by free skiing, not having to train, not having to have that pressure of okay, I have to compete at a high level. And I liked it. And I was like, maybe, yeah, maybe this could happen again. Maybe I could go to another Olympics. And it um, wasn't until this, I think it was around the spring that year, that a close friend of me to me died. He had an aneurysm while he slept. He was 22, I was 24, and I really didn't at the time in my life, like, I was content where I was, but I was really complacent with my path. The only thing I thought was okay, finish school, get a corporate job, buy a house, get married, kids, like just live the normal life. And I remember I went to his funeral, and his dad, who didn't know I had quit ski racing, sorry, he had asked me to put his
Okay.
name on his helmet when I went to the Olympics again.
Wow.
And we were, I think it was at that point, it was close to 8 months before the games. And I had no intention of going back. And so that kind of hit me hard because I was getting older at that point. It's like you're getting into that late stage of your 20s. This person was 22, did not have a chance to fulfill his potential. So with some time and some thought, I decided to do it again. And I got back into training. I was managing a full course load. So for people that aren't, well, people that don't know, I was doing a double major. So 5 classes a semester, traveling 10 hours over the weekend to go train in Vermeer and then drive back to the town that I was going to college in. And figuring out also financially, because I didn't have any financial backing. So I had to take loans. I was late on rent for 1 month. The person who I was renting from was also my friend. So they were kind enough to be a little bit supportive, but it was the most stressful thing I've ever done. And I did it. I ended up qualifying
Wow.
and going to Beijing during probably one of the most stressful periods of my life. And yeah, I don't really know what to say. It's odd because a lot of Olympians who went to Beijing will say that was one of the worst Olympics of their life. It was one of the best. We were in a bubble, so I didn't get to do the exploration that I did in Pyeongchang. It was pretty much most people would go for their event and then they'd have to be out of the village in 48 hours. My Olympic committee was nice enough to let me stay for the whole length of the Olympics, and they allowed me to bring my two best friends. So I got to
That's
experience the
rad.
Olympics. Yeah, the Olympics with my two best friends, and we got to enjoy pretty much just being in this like world of training, eating, sleeping, meeting other Olympians, going to other events that no one was going to because it was a COVID Olympics. So only athletes and coaches can enter. And I think a small amount of foreign dignitaries and specially selected Chinese citizens could attend those events. So we went to like gold medal games, and it was a lot of
Wow.
fun. I enjoyed it. And then after Beijing, I I made a decision that I wanted to step away from the sport, and because I had just got accepted into a master program. So that's what I did. I came back and I just stepped away and started focusing on my school. And but then yeah, something changed in the last year a bit, and I'm here again going for Milan.
That's so cool. So I got so caught up in your story, I completely forgot to ask what your heart looked like at 2 different points. So
That's
for
okay.
those listening, I was completely entranced in the story. So we're gonna back up just a skosh. So um when when you had just finished your first Olympic Games and you talked about you were struggling to know who you were as a person. I have to tell you that I've gone through this journey in the past 10 months of in a different way, but I only thought I had value as to what I could produce or provide, and I was chasing my own dreams. I was chasing an exit. I was chasing this career thing, for a really long time, and I realized that it actually doesn't bring me any joy. I'm good at it, and I still do it, but it doesn't bring me any joy, and in that process, I felt very isolated in a way I have never experienced, and felt very, very broken. And when I was reading your hearts, um, you described your heart, and it was one of those things where I instantly felt and like, oh, I understand. Not that I understand exactly what you were going through, but I understand that feeling of being unsure of your identity, being unsure about what to do next. I only had a plan A. My plan A was to be this business mogul. Um, you know, inflated ego, here I come. But that was my plan, right? And then when all of a sudden that doesn't matter, you have to step back and you go, who am I? What am I doing? What makes me happy? So could you describe your heart in that moment?
It was broken and bleeding. I didn't even know what or had the proper tools to find my identity and fix that broken heart. Like as you've said, like you give everything to this thing and you think it's going to make you happy, you think it's going to bring you fulfillment in your life, and it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to. Um, so then you're very disillusioned with the reality of it. And then the hardest thing for me, and even now I think about it, is they say comparison's the thief of joy. I
Mhm.
often think, okay, what if I just gone to Sochi and then went to school and went got the house and married,
Mhm.
years ago? Where would I be now? Would I have been happier? I do know the answer is no, but sometimes, that
Right.
thought comes in my head, like maybe this wasn't the way it should have been. Maybe it could have been a different way, and I could have been happier that way. But I think that's just part of the process of learning your identity and learning the things that you like to do and things that you don't like to do.
Yeah, and I think that, that human experience, right? Like you've had a metric ton of experience. You've gotten to go to foreign countries, you've met lots of really cool people, you've trained, you've been injured, you were on top of the world, you felt like you had nothing. There was love, there was loss, there's all these things, right? Like that is the human experience. And I think for me, I before didn't do a good job of like thinking about the past in a way of like, is it a map to get me to be a better version of myself? And it's interesting that you mentioned earlier about Michael Phelps and the depression or the sadness that happens after you make it to the Olympics or after you're like, well, what happens next? Um, I experienced that, not that exact thing, but again, this idea of I got to the thing that I was supposed to be getting to, and now intense sadness and loneliness. And for people listening, like whether it's going to the Olympics or whether it's you're an empty nester and your kids are gone and they were your whole life, or whether it's you're in the second chapter of your life or whatever it is, it probably feels crushing and you feel like you're in pieces, but there's something coming next. There's another chapter. And you had not planned for there to be a third Olympic chapter, and here we sit today.
Yeah, I had I laugh about it because I said to my mom and my dad, I remember because they were not happy about me going to Beijing initially because of all the things that happened that were pretty traumatic for 2018 and seeing how it affected my
Mhm.
mental health. So then for me to go to them and be like, "Yeah, just kidding. I want to do a third Olympics." There was a big conversation of, okay, how are we going to prepare for this mentally, physically, and emotionally?
Right, because you ended up pretty broken, um, after the last experience. Tell me a little bit about what that heart looks like.
So even after Beijing, I thought I would be able to escape the post Olympic crash because I'd experienced it the first time. I was like, okay, maybe I'll get over it the second time. But the reality was, I didn't. It was, I wouldn't say it was a worse or better situation. It was just different. And at the time, my heart had missing pieces. It was still broken, but missing. It's like, okay, I've done two Olympics. I now have two undergrad degrees and I'm going to my master's. My life should be great at this point. And I also had landed a really good paying job out of school. and got to travel, got to do really cool stuff, but there were still missing parts in my heart. And I wasn't really sure how to do it. And then that's when I was saying before that I really, probably for the better half of a year and a half, I was really comparing myself to where other people were. Because I had also thought once the Olympics is done, I will have everything else that everybody is going to have. And I didn't. The irony is all those people that had the things that I have were envious of the life that I was having and said, "Hey, like your life is amazing. It's great. Like I wish I could do those things." And I would say to them, "Well, I wish I would be doing what you're doing too." So
Yeah.
it's very interesting now to hear that from other people and to realize like I think everyone's path will be always different, and the people
Mhm.
that follow the straightforward path will later have regrets in life. I mean, the other day, my foreman at my job like just came into my office. He's like, "Hey, we need to talk," and I was like, "Oh, what did I do this time?" And he's like, "You work," because sometimes I work later to get some things done. He's like, "Listen, the work is always going to be there, but what you're doing right now will not. Like you're getting older, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and just go all in. You always have time to come back to work, to get married, to do the life that everybody has." And I think that was very affirming that I'm on the right path.
Isn't it wonderful how, like, the universe will drop messages through somebody or something just when you need it?
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, before we say goodbye, if you had one piece of advice to share with listeners, what would it be?
Follow whatever makes you happy. Um, and don't care what other people think. I really struggled with being open and vulnerable about my story. I'm like, oh, people will judge me. People will judge me for what I'm doing in my life. But if it sets your heart on fire and you really want to do it, just go all in. And if you have adversity, just keep pushing. I mean, for me, even leading up to these Olympics, there was a lot of things that happened. I got fired for asking for Olympic sponsorship, didn't have any financial support. I was pretty much on the verge of financial collapse. And right at the point where I thought I maybe should walk away, things got better. And it's hard for me even now to look back at the last 6 months and realize like it was terrible prospectively, and where I am now, it's good. So at those moments where you really feel like you want to break, just take another step forward and just keep plugging away.
Just take another step forward. Super profound. And I know that, like, I don't have my own children. I have tons of nieces and nephews, and I've always wanted to be the crazy Olympic aunt in the stadium waving like waving flags, right? Like you see like Phelps, right? And all those like
Yeah,
all their family was there like waving the flags. And so number 1, I would love to stay in touch with your career and maybe I will come and see you at the Olympics. It's so cool.
maybe.
I'm so proud of your perseverance and being so open and honest about the waypoints of your life, and that as you reach the pinnacle of your dreams, things also were hard. So, thank you so much for your vulnerability and honesty. It was really cool for me.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.